r/AskReddit. What's the worst thing you've ever heard a teacher say at school? When I was about 9, our teacher asked the class what we wanted to be when we grew up. One kid said he wanted to be a bin man, a garbage man. For US readers, the teacher went into a rant, saying that jobs like these were for the lowest, most unintelligent people in society, and that he should aspire to be better than that. Finally, she asked why he wanted to be a bin man anyway. Because my dad's one, said the kid, by now in tears. Coming from a garbage man himself. Duck that teacher. My dad opened up his own sanitation company and he's way smarter than most people I've met. Garbage men's brains are like a freaking GPS too, it's crazy. Edit. I'd like to thank everyone for telling me they appreciate me and every other sanitation worker. Seriously, we hear it so little that I'm little overwhelmed with all the positive feedback. Age of 9. Lost my father in a horrific accident. I returned to school a few days later and after attendance was taken, the teacher said to me in front of the class got together and sent flowers to your father's funeral. I paid your share, so make sure you bring in $2 tomorrow as I need to be paid back. She then went on with the lessons. As many have asked what happened, I asked to see the school nurse and was sent home. Once home, I told my mother. Returning to school 2 days later, I never saw the teacher again. I don't know how my mother handled it. This wasn't said directly to me, but in middle school I had a teacher grab me from the lunch table and drag me to the principal's office. After grilling me for a while and telling me I know what I did, they finally revealed to me that the teacher stated she witnessed me suggestively sucking my thumb while staring at a female friend of mine. I was just biting my nail. One day in a history class, my professor, who is at least 80 years old, was talking about bedfellows in Victorian England, and was saying how common it was for men to sleep together. He used himself as an example and said that he used to sleep with his grandfather all the time as a child. After he said that, though, he looked at the ground and said to himself, audibly, I still wonder to this day if he molested me. Then he looked back at us, shrugged, and said, oh well, too late to know for sure now. It was fascinating to see someone overcome deep-seated trauma so quickly. Not really the worst, but once in high school my teacher legitimately asked the blind girl in our class why she wasn't going up to check her grade on the grade sheet. Whoever threw that paper, your mom's a hoe. One of my college professors straight up said one day, from my experience, African American students tend to drop my class the most. It's probably too hard for them. Any of you notice how we haven't seen that one black chick who used to sit in the front row for weeks now? Guy was immediately shot down when the black chick raised her hand from the back row saying she'd been here the whole time. She just moved to the back row cause that's where her boyfriend was sitting. My science teacher in 7th grade called a Mexican kid in my class a fence hopper once during the middle of class. In the same vein, I had a high school teacher that nicknamed everyone. His name for my friend from Syria was Green Card. I just wish I was ducking dead not overheard by complete chance while wandering the corridors during a free period. Turned right back around and took the long route so I wouldn't have to walk past the classroom. It was a bit of a broken pedestal moment for me, but I never told anyone else about it. The teacher who said it was one of our most beloved history teachers, who we later found out had been stopped from committing suicide at least twice by one of the deputy heads, who'd been friends with him since their university days, in the past. Not stopped us and talked things out and convinced him it wasn't the best way to deal with his problems, but as in physically picked up and dragged away from the window. He, the deputy head, was quite intimidating as a teacher, but we gained a lot of respect for him after learning that. When I was a senior in high school, I had a teacher tell me that if I wanted to kill myself I had to follow the highway, not cross it, while making cutting motions. My 6th form tutor told us the same thing. He used to work as a counselor for recovering drug addicts and had had patients commit suicide. Now that I think about, I do hope he didn't give his patients this advice. Male teacher was talking about the dress code to me and a friend of mine during lunch. He stated he doesn't like seeing a bunch of fatties in short shorts, but then gestured towards a thin girl in short shorts walking up the step and said, but that I don't mind. Had a girl at my school get in huge trouble for her dress one day. It didn't break the dress code on her, and another girl was wearing the exact same dress and it did break it for her. The girl in trouble asked why she was the one being disciplined. Because she looks good in it. When I was in high school, a gym teacher came up to me one day towards the end of class when everyone was just kind of freely shooting basketballs and hanging out on the bleachers. I was standing by myself and walked up and asked me something about the neighboring town. He said, "Did you know that in Olney, they used to hang niggers with velvet?" and then just walked away. It was the only time he ever talked to me. I'm white and he was a black guy, maybe 6'8". I think he was in the NBA for one season or something. Everyone loved him, so I guess he was just messing with me, but he got me pretty good. First day on the job, teacher walks in as the new CAD teacher and his name's on the board. It looks like you'd pronounce it as man. He announces right away that it's not and that you will be thrown out of his class if you call him that. He does roll and gets to a French African name that looks like it might be pronounced for a gay slur starting with F. Does not use better judgment and uses that slur as a last name. It's pronounced Faj J. Osman. Kid obviously had to deal with this problem his whole life and was not keen on the mix-up. New teacher blows up and is hollering at this 16-year-old who's not backing down. Takes a bit but they both disappear. Teacher was never seen in the building again. This was first period. First day of school. Okay, I have one. When I was in elementary, I got confused at lunchtime and threw my food out early and wandered outside for recess. Alone. Realizing my mistake and having no idea what to do, I went back inside and told a lunch lady and asked what I should do. She dragged me by the arm to the center of the lunchroom with a live mic and informed everyone of my mistake and how no one should do what I did because it was a bad thing. She told everyone I was going to get expelled. I was sobbing at that point. I kept asking her what expelled meant but she didn't answer me. All I knew was that it was a bad thing. I never told my mom until years later. And no, I didn't get actually expelled. It's impossible to rape a male. If he gets a boner, he wanted it. From a middle school government teacher. So, by that logic, a woman isn't raped if she gets wet and or has an orgasm? My 8th grade science teacher would pick on this one girl in the front row. One time he was going to make a joke about her breath being so bad he could see it. Instead he said, "I can see your breasts," to a 14-year-old girl. My history teacher called himself Big Daddy. Edit. It is a little alarming to me how many people have had teachers call themselves the same thing. My HS Gov teacher told me I was faking an autoimmune illness and that I'd never make it anywhere with my laziness. She was trash. Edit. I was not faking it. I had medical documentation to back me up. I am now nearly finished with my BS in biology and headed to med school next year after surgery. Suck it, Mrs. Norris. How dare you write that? You're practically emotionally handicapped. It's psychopathic. Said to me at 12, not even half a year after my mom died. She made us write an essay about our home life, which in retrospect was a ducked up excuse to snoop into my situation, and didn't like how I used humor to cope, so she pulled me out of the class to yell at me for 5 minutes for not being sad enough. I don't even remember what I wrote besides cracking some jokes about my dad's outfits. Mrs. Noodle, my 3rd grade math teacher, 1987. I missed 2 weeks of school due to a horrible case of chickenpox and fell behind with whatever it was that we were working on. A month after I came back to school, I was still struggling with math, but was too young and scared to ask for help. We had a test that I failed, so Mrs. Ducking Noodle brought my 3rd grade self up to the front of the classroom and shamed me. She told the entire classroom that Bifaha will never succeed in math. I ended up crying and going to the nurse with a stomachache. I'll never forget how awful she was to me, and I struggled with math for the rest of the time that I was in school. Woodshop teacher telling an Asian kid he doesn't really need to wear a face shield on the lathe, you know, because of the eyes. He meant it as a joke, but even at 15 we all kind of hushed and looked at each other like, dude, did he just duck and say that? Just because I'm on a diet doesn't mean I can't look at the menu. Priest in a Catholic high school, after he was caught looking down a girl's shirt. Not all Mexicans are from Mexico. Some are from El Salvador. BCOM professor. I was at rugby practice and we were doing stretches and we were all lying on the ground and my friend has his head positioned close to my other friend's crotch. My friend says quite loudly, "It looks like you're about to suck my dong," when he realized that our coach, who is also a teacher at our school, heard him. He started to apologize for swearing when our coach says he wants a meal, not a snack. Chemistry teacher that got annoyed easily with my class specifically. "Alright, duck this. You're all going to fail this exam." People in my class would never shut up, and it was the last week of school, so he was just done with us. In tryouts for the school's annual Christmas play, the teacher directing the production denied the most talented and well-suited student the part of playing the Virgin Mary because the girl was black. The teacher said the play would be criticized if a black girl were allowed to play the Virgin because everyone knows that Mary was white, as God intended. A teacher told the story of when he was working at a girls' summer camp. The showers had broken down and he had to go fix it for the girls who were mid-shower. They had the girls put their faces to the walls for some reason. Naked bums all along the walls. He told it as if it was a funny anecdote. I was creeped the duck out and can't imagine how the girls who were going to said camp felt about the story. Paraphrasing slightly, but there's no such thing as Asperger's syndrome. This is just attention-seeking behavior, said to me, about me. Admittedly, this was over 20 years ago, when not everybody had heard of it, but still, I'd had 2 days of tests and brain scans resulting in a long-form diagnosis explanation which my parents had shared with my teachers. Every other teacher basically reacted with, "Oh, so that's why he's so weird. Okay, we can work with this, but not this guy. Duck you, Mr. M." Used to have an alcoholic teacher who, when handing out textbooks, slammed one down in front of a larger boy in our class, pointed at him and said, "Don't eat it." Yeah, the kid cried. "You are incompetent, terrible boy who has no decency and will never amount to anything in your life. I'll be surprised if you're even capable of finishing this year, let alone school." Very damaging to 9-year-old me. Shut the duck up. I am better than God. Not the same teacher. Your mother should have swallowed you. Not to me, but the kid had that coming. When I was 12, my teacher said my knitting had too many errors in it. It had 4, and ripped it to shreds. I was supposed to start all over again but excused myself and went to the bathroom where I cried for the rest of the lesson. Not the worst thing ever, but definitely the worst advice. In high school there was a subject I really liked. It was called informatics too, but it was mostly basics of graphic design and creative digital stuff in general. I was really inspired for a project we had to do, and really excelled in it. Made a green screen at home. Did some advanced video editing. It was through the roof. The professor, Mr. V, who was in charge on that subject, loved it. Gave me an A+. Showed it to other groups of students. Later I was told he would show that video presentation to future students as an example of a well done project. The other professor, Ms. M, who taught the same subject, but not to my group, met me a few days later in the hall and told me, "I saw what you did for Professor V's class. Congratulations. It's very good, but you shouldn't have done it. Why? You've raised the bar for everyone else." So somebody who would have gotten an A+ could now get a B or less. I actually took it as it is and it kinda ducked me up for a while. Wish I could go back in time and tell her to duck off. I'm not in charge of grading and I've got the right to excel as much as I want. Beach. Edit. Actually, there was no grading on a curve in high school, so there was really no need for her to have that attitude. She was probably thinking I raised the bar in a way that Professor V would now expect more from other students. Or something? TBH, I wasn't thinking about that at all in advance. It was maybe the only class I really enjoyed that semester. I just wanted to have fun FFS. As for the part where I called her a beach, well, she really was a beach. In UK year 11, age 15/16, an English literature teacher once told my class, "Polar bears almost exclusively eat penguins." I was not good at literature but I was good at science subjects and I was not this teacher's favorite pupil. So when she said this I quite quickly argued back saying that she was wrong. She protested and I explained that polar bears live in that Arctic Ocean and, while there are various species of penguin, none of them live in the northern hemisphere. This was an open argument during class and she offered to Google the answer. So she did, and when I was proven correct by the internet, she sent me out the class. I was a metalhead with long hair, In the 9th grade, my algebra teacher, who was working on his 3rd DUI, told me that I'd OD before I ever graduated. I sent him an invite to my graduation. I mentioned how I hadn't OD'd. He no-showed, but one of my other teachers came, told me what an a-hole that guy was, and that he'd be sure to ask him why he couldn't make the graduation, just to rub it in a little. My brother had a friend whose mother had died the day before, but he still went to school for some reason. He walked into the class late or something and the teacher asked jokingly, "Did your mum die?" He just said yes she did and left. My theater teacher in high school told me I was too fat to act unless I played the fat idiot sidekick, would never be in a musical, and that I wouldn't make it in the world of theater. About a year later, her husband cast me in a musical and one other show because he really liked me. All of her comments for the 4 years I was in high school really ducked me up and made me rethink wanting to do theater, which is one of my only passions. I'm glad I stuck with it and continued on through my senior year even though she was still awful to me. I had a teacher stand me up in front of the class and have them say stupid in unison. That really did a lot for my 5th grade self-esteem, especially considering my dad was in rehab at the time and the reason I was called stupid was I lost my homework at said rehab visiting him. Joke's on her though. I am an accomplished scientist today despite that terrible chain of events. This one English teacher at my school once told a black kid to read a passage in some slavery novel to read it blacker. It got on the news and she eventually just quit. She also moved into my apartment building and I occasionally run into her, which is pretty funny. Welp, I have one for this. I was a bit of a problem child growing up because I would rather read, write, or draw than do academic things. It didn't help that I studied in an Indian school and that our education system places emphasis on rote memorization over practical understanding. So I had a bit of a reputation with the teachers. The moral science teacher got sick and the head teacher subbed in for her once. I'd had my run-ins with her, so I was a bit wary to begin with. Moral science was a silly subject in the first place, but that day we were talking about imagination, so I was super hyped. At some point during the class she asked us something along the lines of who here visualizes while they read, and I eagerly stuck my hand in the air. My moment to shine. Right? Wrong? All I got was a look of condescension and a "really? You?" in front of the whole class. I was absolutely crushed for a day or two, but I got over it pretty quickly, I think. But it stuck in my mind as a particularly mean thing to do for no real reason. Ah well. I'm late to the party, but by far the worst thing was what my grade 6 teacher screamed at us. We'd been doing something kids do, probably talking, and she went off at a class of 30 12-year-olds screaming, "I hope you all get your heads bashed in at high school." 9 out of 10 great teacher. I know you said worst, but I just am always looking for a reason to share this. My sociology professor in college once stopped mid-lecture, looked around the room, said, "Don't ever get roadhead while riding a motorcycle. There. Don't say I never taught you anything," and then walked out an hour early. My brother abused me as a child. It started around 3rd or 4th grade, and when I was in 4th grade he held a pocket knife my dad had given him up to my neck. I told my class about it because I was scared. My teacher took me to the hallway and told me, "Don't say those things or you'll be taken away from your family." I never mentioned the abuse to anyone again until 7th grade because of the warning this teacher gave me. It only got worse after the knife incident. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.